Welcome to today's virtual CP meeting on overview of TDS provisions applicable for 15 CACB and SHSS status. I welcome all the members of all the branches, Gandhidham, Anand and Bhuj, also chairman and the managing committee members on today's virtual CP meeting. Firstly, I will invite Karan Thakkar, Gandhidham branch chairman, for welcome address.
Thank you, Sanjay Bhai. Good evening, everyone. Past chairman of WRC, CA Pritim Madam, branch nominee 2 of Gandhidham branch of WRC of ICI, chairmen of Bhuj branch, CA Jitendra Thakkar, and chairman of Anand branch, CA Bhavesh Thakkar, and all the committee members of all the 3 branches. I heartily welcome every one of you on today's evening seminar on overview of TDS provision applicable of 15 CACB and residential status. At times, we practically face that in terms of foreign remittances. In case of non-applicability provisions also, the bankers are demanding for 15 CACB, without which the remittance they are not allowing. Henceforth, it is very important to understand those crucial aspects, because practically in case of foreign trade, where there is a very limited scope of work, but the complexities and the accuracy and the strictness in terms of the penalties and law which are there are need to be addressed very properly. And I'm very thankful to Paras Savla sir for being there with us today. He has a great command on this subject matter, and I'm sure with his wisdom and knowledge which he would be sharing, all our doubts would be cleared out and we would be gaining an edge in terms of the knowledge in that. Thank you. Over to you, Sanjay Bhai.
Thank you, Karan Bhai. Next, I would like to request Jitendra Thakkar, Bhuj branch chairman, for his address. Over to Jitendra Bhai.
Good evening to all of you. In the present scenario, we are living in a global village. So nowadays, traveling of people from one country to another is common, and we are doing lots of international financial transactions. We need to guide our client regarding the income tax compliance to be made in this regard. So today's topics, TDS provision applicable for the 15 CA and 15 CB and residential status is important. And I welcome CA Paras by Savla and Pritben on behalf of Bhuj, Gandhidham and Anand branch. Thank you.
Thank you, Jitendra Bhai. Next, I would like to request Sri Bhavesh Thakkar, Anand branch chairman, for his address. Over to you, Bhavesh Bhai.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I, CA Bhavesh Thakkar, Chairman Anand Branch, welcome you all participants and dignitaries in today's virtual CP meeting on overview of TDS provision applicable for 15 CACB and residential status by learned faculty CS Paras Savla ji. It's our great pleasure to join in such interesting subject. Wish you all happy learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhavesh Bhai. Next, I would like to request Priti Madam, immediate past chairman of WRC and nominee of Gandhidham branch, for his address. Over to Priti ma'am. Ma'am, you are on mute.
Thank you very much, Sanjay Bhai. So whenever we visit Gandhidham branch or Bhuj or Anand branch, we get a call, ક્યાં પહોંચ્યા, કેટલી વાર છે હજુ, travelingમાં. But now our standard question is like, am I audible? You are on mute kind of thing, because the scenario has changed, So there's a standard questions which are coming up. And first, let me appreciate and put on record all the efforts of Gandhidham branch along with Bhuj and Anand branch. The commitment of this office bearers, I can say, Chairman Karan Bhai, he has just got married hardly 3-4 days, and he is here in the session. And Sanjay Bhai, he's just like got baby at his residence, and he has become father, and he's there like over here serving to anyone and over here. So this is the commitment level as a bearing the post in the office at Gandhidham branch. Bhuj branch, Jitendra Bhai always talking this, I have to do this session, please give me this speaker, want Nilesh Bhai Shah as a speaker on capital market and various other speakers continuously, giving lot of guidance and committed to all the members of the branch. Similarly, Bhavesh Bhai at Anand branch, since last year when I have visited couple of times, his commitment and now in this pandemic also. And friends, I can see lot of senior members over here like Ramji Bhai Patel and various other senior members who have joined for this novel topic and a very important topic what the branches have chosen in this current scenario, the TDS provisions for section 194 and 195. And this and when senior members are here, I really appreciate that all are so much interested in this topic and that is organized by the branches. Friends, in this current pandemic, what I came to know in Kutch also, a lot of things are coming up and COVID is increasing. It is very important that at least we take various safety measures on our part and see that the things are taking proper shape. Now in Mumbai, the things are becoming a little comfortable. Let us hope everywhere in each part of our country as and as a whole, as a globe, the things become very, become safety and secured way. I really pray the safety for each branch member and overall our fraternity and human beings overall in our country. Friends, again, there is a membership drive which is going on at ICI level. And all the, at some of the members, maybe junior, senior, are not able to log in and register at SSP portal. So my request to each member who has not able to pay the membership fees or log into portal, please come back to branch, either chairman or any of the office bearer or any of the committee member or through directly to me or through these members, whatever support required for payment of membership fees will definitely be given. This is my commitment for each and every member of the branch, so that because a lot of times we are hearing UDIN is also now connected through our membership and COP, and if our membership is we are not able to pay, it is really, and sometimes we don't know also and we are not able to register and not able to pay. So please see that your membership fee for the year 2020-21 is paid. 15 December is the last date. So again reminding you, please make sure if it is not paid, it is paid. Your friends are also paid. And we can, Karan Bhai and all the branch chairman, we can have a standard message, on if you have WhatsApp group. So you can put, I will share with you the standard message. So if you have, you can put in your, through your friends on the WhatsApp. If you have branch group of the WhatsApp, you can put over there. So it becomes easier for the members to pay it. So stay safe, stay secure. Uh, uh, Happy ICA. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am, for your wishes. Next, I would like to request Hiral Prajapati, Secretary of Anand Branch, for a profile of today's faculty. Over to you, Hiral Bhai. You are on mute, Hiral Bhai. Unmute yourself.
Jai Bharat to everyone. It is my great pleasure to introduce CA Paras Savla on behalf of Gandhidham, Bhuj and Anand branch of WRC of ICI. CA Paras Savla is a chartered accountant from Institute of Chartered Accountants of India and Institute of Chartered Accountants of England and Wales. He is certified fraud examiner from the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners USA. He has qualified DISA from ICI. He is insolvency professional and registered valuer of securities and financial assets. He is partner with the KBP and Associates. He also had a stint with one of the world's big four accounting firms. He has advised several corporate and non-corporate on domestic tax, international taxation, routine investment into India, structuring the transaction, outbound investment, conducting due diligence and planning for merger or demerger, acquisitions, direct tax litigations, and corporate finance. He has worked with various listed and non-listed corporates. His views are regularly featured in various Indian and foreign prominent newspapers like Economic Times, Times of India, Mint, DNA, Vyapar, Commodity World, Gujarat Samachar, Gulf News, etc. He regularly writes for various newspapers, magazines, newspapers on the topic of direct tax and corporate laws. He has addressed audience at various seminars, forums, and conferences. So with this brief introduction, welcome you, sir.
Thank you, Bhavesh bhai. Over to you, Paras ji, for today's session.
Thank you for giving me opportunity to speak at this for the 3 branches. I thank Kiran bhai, Jitendra bhai, Bhavesh bhai, Hiral bhai for kind words, Sanjay bhai for coordinating with me since long, and Atul bhai. I really commend the Karan bhai who is recently married and being at the for this event. So one can say to become in order to marry you need to become a chairman. So, coming to today's topic, I'll share my screen. Screen has been seen?
Yes, sir.
And my voice is clear?
Yes.
Thank you. Previous provisions, section 195, 15 CA-CB residential status is a topic what is allotted to me. Topic is a very interesting topic, and I really thank the branch, Gandhidham branch, for choosing this topic, because this has been recently this has been a very controversial issue after the latest amendment. But because of the COVID, probably people would not have got the gravity of this recent amendment which has happened in the residential status. But this is going to create a huge issues for everyone. For you, when a chartered accountant issues a 15 CB form, he does the work of much of the work of the tax officer. And I will say that when you are issuing these certificates, you should see that that you are taking, when you are taking this onerous responsibility on you for giving the what is the right rate of tax, you should charge also accordingly. It's not a rat race that because I have heard various places in the country that people issued 15 CA-CB at for very minuscule fees. As a CA, we should all see that we follow the ICA guidelines for minimum scale of fees, and especially in case of such type of certificates. We should see that when we are taking such onerous responsibility, we don't compromise on the quality, and we don't charge what is really due to us. It may be possibility that at times there is a repetition of work, or there is a similar nature of certificates are being issued. In that scenario, you may consider some lower fee than normal fees, but otherwise you take care that the fees are being charged appropriately. What is the object of section 195? This has been enunciated by the CBD circular way back in 1974. It says that this is to ensure the tax has been deducted at source when the payment is made to non-resident. Subsequently, there is no difficulty for a tax officer, because the person whom the payment is made is not in India. And since the person is not in India, once the payment is made, money has gone out of India, person is outside India, the Indian tax authority or officer may have very limited wherewithal to collect taxes which were due to country. We should always see that due taxes are being collected by the India. There is no point in giving any undue concessions to the person who is not a resident of India. if you see that in certain countries don't charge tax, but there are some differential rates for them. For example, if you are in Middle East, if you want to get some certificate from certain government authority, there is a very nominal rate for the resident of that country, but there is a very high rate for the non-resident. So in short, whenever any opportunity any government seizes to collect the money from non-resident, they charge at very may not be a concessional rate to what is being charged to the resident, and rightly so. So in that, keeping that in mind, so when we are doing a very onerous duty, we should see that the taxes which are due to the Indian government are being paid and collected under Section 195. What does Section 195 says? Section 195 can be, we can divide into 4 parts. First part is that it gives the responsibility. It gives responsibility to deduct tax. To whom it gives responsibility? To any person. The person can be resident or non-resident. So Section 195 has applicability even to the person who is not resident of India, whether he has any place of residence in India, any business connection in India or not is immaterial. What is required that if there are certain payments made by that person to non-resident, then the Section 195 is triggered. What types of payments are covered? Any interest except the interest which is covered in Section 194 LB, 194 LC or Section 194 LD or any other sum chargeable under the provisions of Act. So Section 195 applies only in respect to the sums which are chargeable to tax. It applies to interest and any other sum which is, and it doesn't apply to the sums which are not chargeable to tax in India. For example, if any income is exempt under Section 10, so that is exempt. So on that, Section 195 is not applicable. TDS under Section 195 will not apply. For example, in a partnership form, there is a partner who is a non-resident, and that partner is paid a share of profit to by the Indian firm, though this is subject to FEMA. So since share of profit is exempt under Section 10, so there will be no tax liability under Section 195. But if that such partner has been paid a remuneration or interest, then the Section 195 will apply. Because otherwise, Section 192A capital A says that if any interest is paid to partner, no TDS is required to be deducted. But that will apply only if the partner is a resident. But in case of non-resident partner, the TDS under Section 195 will apply. You have certain sections like 194C, which says of some payments which are personal in nature. For example, if now the TDS is applicable to proprietary firm also, individual. And when such individual makes a payment for his personal work, maybe he has given some contract for doing repairs at the home, and that amount which has been paid for such repairs exceeds the limit which has been specified under Section 194C. In that scenario, section provides the deduction. The section provides exemption that the 194C will not apply to the personal payments. But no such similar exemption has been provided under Section 195. Hence, 195 will apply even to the payments which are personal in nature. The payer is a non-business person, and if such sums are chargeable to tax in India, 195 will apply to that person. So in that scenario, the payer who is individual need to obtain 10 also, because in case of payments which are made towards the rent or towards the buying a immovable property, it has been provided that 10 is not required. You can file it under the 10 only, that you have simplified a return come challan, which everyone is knowing. But for deduction under Section 195, and payment is in the personal in nature, you need to obtain Section 195 is applicable, and you need to obtain the 10. You can't make a payment without obtaining the 10. Hence, you need to file the return at the end of quarter also. When tax is required to be deducted at source, it is as usual, tax is required to be deducted at source at the time of making a payment or at the time of making a credit. whichever is earlier. So payment can be made by issue of check, draft, or any other mode. Even the constructive payments may also be covered here. But there are certain decisions which says that in case of royalties and FTS, the royalties and FTS are taxable in the year in which they are received and not in the year in which the credit is made to the account of that person. Hence, the High Court, Bombay High Court in case of Siemens, Delhi Tribunal in case of Pizza Hut, or even the AR ruling, these two they are held that the payment TDS can be made, or such payments are taxable on the time of receipt, hence TDS will apply in those years. But there is a contrary decision of AR in case of FLACT. There are favorable decisions that payment can be made, TDS can be made at the time when the payment is made. This decision can be used only in case of need and should not be used as a planning measure, and the TDS to be deducted whichever is earlier. At times, some book entries are being made. So when certain book entries are made, there are also some decisions which says that when the book entries are made, TDS is not required to be deducted. But still, I will say that this should not be used as a planning measure. What is the rate of TDS? TDS rate applies as if you see the section 192 of salary, there is no specific rate is mentioned in the 192 for the salaries. You have to go for the slab rate and deduct the tax. But if you come to 194J, payments to professionals, the rate of tax is 10%. Recently, it has been reduced to 7.5%. Similarly, in respect of 195, there is no flat rate has been mentioned as such. Rate is what the rate in force. Rate in force is a rate which is specified in the Finance Act of the relevant year, or which is specified in the agreement, which is DTAA, what we can say under section 90, or in case of any notification issued under section 90 capital A. So at times the rate of tax may go as high as 43-44% in respect of a TDS for your payment to non-resident. At what rate the TDS is required to be deducted? Because when the payment is being made to non-resident, there is an exchange rate fluctuation. The exchange rate changes every day, or every minute, or rather we can say. So what is the rate, what is the exchange rate we should apply for the purpose of TDS? The rule says that when the payment was due, when the TDS was required to be deducted, you should consider rate of that date for making a TDS. And when the actual payment was made, the TDS would have changed, the rate would have changed, but no impact or no impact should be given for the in respect of the change in exchange rate subsequent to making the subsequent date to date the tax was required to be deducted. Usually there is threshold limit for making a payment to the various payments. For example, in case of professional, it is 30,000 rupees. But no such threshold limit has been provided for section 195. So even 100 rupees payment is made will be subject to TDS under section 195. Certain types of payment can be made not in cash but in kind. So whether the 195 will apply to such payments and the payment is made in kind or not. We have Supreme Court decision in case of Kanchenjunga where the contract was for the fishing and the fish and the settlement of contract was being made by providing the fishes which were fished during that period or during that time. So Supreme Court has held that even there is a payment which is made in kind, section 195 will apply and TDS is required to be deducted at source under section 195. You may find that there were certain rates which is there under the Income Tax Act and there is certain rate under DTAA. You need to find out whether rate under section 195 as per the rate in force or DTAA, whichever is beneficial. You have option to apply the rate which is beneficial to the payee for the purpose of deduction of tax at source. Then the issue may arise whether the rate which is there or whether the cess surcharge is required to be added or not to be added. The answer can be twofold. In case when you are applying a rate which is specified under the Income Tax Act, cess and surcharge will apply. But in case when the rate is specified under DTAA and you are using that rate, for example, in respect of fees for technical service, rate of 10% is specified under specific article of DTAA and you are applying that rate, in such scenario, in my view, a cess and surcharge is not applicable. Only rate which is specified under DTAA should be applied on this. There are various sums which are chargeable under tax. Then the section uses the sum chargeable under any sum chargeable under the Act. So how will the rule? How we will determine that sum is chargeable or not chargeable, or what are relevant provisions where you need to look into it? In respect of salary, though section 195 doesn't apply to salary, for salary 192 applies. 192 is a section which applies to resident as well as non-resident, both. But still, if you see the section, tax is required to be deducted under section 192, but tax is required to be computed using section 15, read with section 9(1) Roman 2. And in respect of DTAA, generally Article 15 is covers with the salary. Business and profession is taxable if there is a business connection in India. If any business income is being done and there is no business connection in India, any payments which are being made will not be subject to TDS usually, unless until there is a business connection or a property or asset or source of income is in India, or transfer of capital asset is situated in India. Relevant section is 9(1)(1), which covers the business connection. And the article is 5, 7, and 14, which covers the business, then the PE, everything has been covered in these 3 articles. So you need to look into these 3 articles, whether the tax is required to be deducted or not to be deducted, and whatever is beneficial to the taxpayer, in the sense the PE, you need to apply the rate accordingly. Dividend income. Dividend till the assessment year 2021, dividend was exempt under section 115(0), but the deemed dividend was not exempt. Only dividend which is there declared by a company was exempt under section 115(0), because a specified rate of tax was specified there. At time of declaration, Indian company was required to deduct pay the tax on behalf of dividend. But now with effect of 1/4/2020, the dividend, whenever a dividend is declared by Indian company, it is taxable in the hands of a recipient. There is no tax to be paid by the company. In that view, you need to look into the provisions of DTAA, which is specified in Article 10, or Income Tax Act 914, or Section 115A. Because in many cases, DTAA provides the rate of tax which is less than 10%, on which tax is required to be withheld. Otherwise, if it is under the Indian laws, it will be going as per the slab rates. Interest income. Unless those specified in the section 194 exempted, the interest is required, tax is required to be deducted. You need to look into section 115A, Article 11. Usually in various articles, interest rate of tax has been specified at 5%, or even lower in some of the articles. for the making of TDS. Royalties and FTS. Fees for technical service is a term which was invented by India and is given to the foreign countries. So royalties and FTS, Article 12 covers them. And the Act, if you see 916 and 917 or 115A is there. In various income tax provisions, the rate of tax for royalties is specified at the 15%. But if you look at DTAA, rate of tax has been various countries, the rate is 5% or 10%. Hence, the rate which is beneficial can be applied in that scenario. Capital gains is chargeable to the country in which the property or shares are situated. We have the famous decision of Vodafone, where it has been specified, that was also 195 case, and the department was trying to take a stand that the ultimate the shares on which the shares were transferred in the foreign country, those derive value in India. Hence, the TDS is required to be done. However, Supreme Court has held that TDS is not required to be done. Law has been amended retrospectively, and everyone is knowing the controversy surrounding this. So, and now the provision under Section 9 has been brought in, where indirect transfers has also been subject to the indirect transfer. Means if the shares of say Mauritius company is transferred to another non-resident, but that Mauritius company derives the value more than 50% of the value out of the assets or property situated in India, then such transfer is considered indirect transfer, and their tax withholding of tax is required to be done even if the payment is made by one non-resident to another non-resident. Recently, there is a MLI being done, multilateral instruments. These multilateral instruments, the single agreement, which will amend around 5,000 to 6,000 tax treaties around the world. So now, when you're looking at any rate of tax as per the section, you need to consider what is the impact of MLI, and if the person to MLI, the rate of tax may change, may not change, it may reduce, may increase, and then you need to apply those provisions. Coming to the Form 15 CACB, here are certain issues which you have posed to me. Let me take that before coming to the form. That any freight payment is being made to the non-resident, whether 195 will apply to that provisions or not. Recently, Gujarat High Court, in case of Sumit India Water Treatment, has held that since the payment is made to the foreign agent, to the agent, Indian agent, and Indian agent is a resident in India, but he is an agent for the foreign company, provision of Section 194C or 195 will not apply, and Section 172 applies, in view of which the TDS under Section 195 may not fall into it. There are certain types of payment which are reimbursement in nature. For example, there is some import of goods. And along with the import of goods, the freight is on Indian party. So seller will also add the freight in that invoice and send it to the Indian party. And that freight, whatever is merely, if in case it's merely reimbursement of the expenditure, then in that scenario, 195 will not apply. In short, in case of any reimbursement, Section 195 will not apply, because 195 applies only in case where there is an income embedded in that transaction. If there is no income embedded in that transaction, in that value which has been transacted, 195 will not apply. If you see the language of Section 195, it says that any person responsible for paying to non-resident sum which is not being chargeable shall at the time of credit of such income. The Section 195 uses the word such income and not such payments. Since the word is such income, income has to be read. It means there is an income embedded in that transaction. Only section withholding tax or TDS under section 195 will apply, not otherwise. Hence, any TDS, any reimbursements which are there, TDS will not apply. It may so happen that Indian company has a branch in foreign country, and the payment is being made to that foreign branch. The provision of section 195 will not apply in such scenario because the payment is made to foreign branch of Indian company, and the foreign branch is a resident of India because the branch doesn't have its own independent existence. In view of this, any payment made to such foreign branch, 195 will not apply to it. Further, in case any payments which are made and or for which any approval is required to obtain from RBI or any regulatory authority, even though payment is created in the books of accounts, unless until such approval is received from the regulatory authority, 195 will not apply. Hence, the book entry made in the books for such payment will not be subject to the withholding of tax or under. And for this, we also have certain decisions in the case of Pipavav Shipyard, which is the Bombay Tribunal decision, and UB Limited, which is a Karnataka High Court decision, which says that merely book entry, TDS is not required to be deducted. And when the approval is required, the TDS is required deducted in the year in which the payment is made and not in the year in which the credits have been made or where the approval is not been received. Coming to Form 15 CA-CB, Form 15 CA, CB is the certificate which is to be issued by Chartered Accountant on all the fields which in the Form CB is there, is captured in the Form 15 CA. So there are 4 parts, Part A, Part B, Part C and Part D. Part A applies only in respect of remittance where it doesn't exceed the 5 lakhs rupees. The amount is chargeable to tax. So when amount is not exceeding 5 lakhs rupees, even though amount is chargeable to tax, you don't require to obtain the 15 CB from the Chartered Accountant. Remittance can be made directly without obtaining 15 CB. Part B applies when the remittance exceeds rupees 5 lakhs, amount is chargeable to tax, or order under section 195 2, 3 or 197 has been obtained from the income tax officer. Since you obtain the order from the income tax officer, maybe under section 195 bracket 2 or bracket 3 or 197, the certificate from Chartered Accountant is not required. It is 15 CB is not required. Relying on that tax officer certificate, you can make a remittance. Earlier, the Part B was applicable only in respect of the remittance made up to rupees 5 lakhs. Subsequently, form has been modified and now it applies if the remittance exceeds 5 lakhs rupees. Part C is there where the remittance exceeds rupees 5 lakhs. Amount is chargeable under the provisions of the Income Tax Act. And usually usually the certificate from the tax officer under section 195.2 or 195.3 or 197 is not obtained. Here the form has 2 parts, section A and section B. We will deal with those things subsequently. So when you're filling the part C, once you fill that data is being, they will ask the acknowledgement number of the form filing of Form 15 CB. Once you fill that acknowledgement number, all data which is been filed by the Chartered Accountant or what is been covered under that Form 15 CB will be captured in the Form 15 CA. So 90% of fields will be auto-populated in this form. Part D, the remittance. which is not chargeable under the provisions of Income Tax Act, and other than the payments referred in rule 37BB3 and 37BB2. We'll see through this what are the payments which are covered under this rule. So one of the question was that even certain payments on which TDS is not applicable, authorized dealer being a bank keep on asking the Form 15 CB from the business person or from the remitter. If you recollect, there was a circular issued by RBI. RBI wrote to the Income Tax Office that on which payments or whether on all the payments that TDS is required to be deducted or not, whether the CS certificate is required to be obtained or not. At that point of time, CBDT just replied that yes, for all payments, you required to obtain the 15 CB certificate from the chartered accountant. Pursuant to this, the RBI issued a circular saying that all payments 15 CB is required to be obtained. But subsequently in 2013, rule has been amended. The reporting has been made mandatory for all types of payments. But 15 CB is not required in all cases except in the specified cases. We shall deal with those scenarios subsequently. When the payment is made under the payments is subject to tax as per the Income Tax Act, but which is exempt under DTAA. So whether Part C will apply or Part D will apply is the question marks, because the Part D says the remittance is not taxable. But if you look at the D, that remittance is not taxable means the remittance which is not taxable as per Income Tax Act. If the remittance is not taxable as per DTAA, in that scenario, in my view, Part C will require and need to obtain the CA certificate for such types of transfers or payments. There may be a scenario that certain transactions, there is some capital asset is being sold, and that capital asset is resulting into loss to the person who is making a transfer. So in that scenario, whether Part C or Part D will apply. In my view, Part C will apply only and not the Part D, because Part D says which is exempt. And when there is a loss, doesn't mean that is exempt, but because of loss, there is no tax liability. Hence, Part D, A or B will not be applicable. It will be the Part C that will be applicable. With effect from 1st April 2016, the Form 15 CB required to furnish electronically. Once you file the form electronically, there is no provision where you can modify or amend the form. Hence, utmost care to be taken while uploading the Form 15 CB, that because there is no possibility of amending that form. The rule what was spoken just now, the rule 37BB, that has been extended to scope of reporting has been expanded to all payments made to non-resident, whether taxable in India or not taxable in India. But it provides certain exemptions in the form that no information required to be furnished for any sum which is not chargeable under provisions of Act if remittance is made by individual. If the remittance is not made by individual, then it will apply. And it doesn't require a prior approval from the RBI as per the provision of Section 5. So, if the payment is being made by the non-individual, though that is sums are not chargeable to tax, you need to file the relevant Form 15 CACB in that concern, except the remittance which are in the specified. So there are 33 remittances which are being specified on which the form, you are not required to file the form. Such remittances are, you are making investment in the equity shares of the foreign company, or making investment in debt instruments. Investment for the setting up wholly owned subsidiary or branch outside India. Payment loans extended to non-residents. Payment against the imports, advance payment against imports, or settlement of invoice against imports. Imports by diplomatic mission. Then certain payments like medical treatment, postal services, freight insurance related to import or export of goods, construction of project outside India. These are some of the items. The list is mentioned in this slide. You can read to go through this list, and then if your payment is not falling within these limits, within these categories, your Form 15 CACB is required to be filled to the RBI through the authorized dealer. An authorized dealer will submit that all the forms which are filed during the quarter to the income tax officer. What is the consequences if you don't file the Form 15 CA or CB? There is a penalty under section 271 capital I, and that penalty is of rupees 1 lakh rupees. The penalty is also levied in case there is inaccurate filing. So if the sums are chargeable to tax and you have shown that as not chargeable to tax, in that scenario, there can be a possibility of invoking section 271 capital I and saying that inaccurate particulars were submitted. So hence this, not only the penalty is applicable, even the Indian person will be considered as an agent of non-resident under section 163, and he may require to pay the whole of the amount of TDS that is applicable to that person. One more point, that the form, when the CA is filing the form 15CB, and in that there is some error has been crept, you will agree that recently the Income Tax Act has been amended, which provides that if the professional, chartered accountant, or even merchant bank issues any certificate where the which is a erroneous certificate or wrong certificate, then the commissioner can levy penalty up to rupees 10,000 rupees. The penalty amount is not very high, but once the penalty is levied, you may be debarred from doing various activities. For example, in case the chartered accountant issued the certificate and penalty is levied under Income Tax Act of, for some incorrect particulars or whatever reason may be, and that chartered accountant may opt for making payment because the amount is small, so the cost of litigation may be much higher. In that scenario, you will see that and the penalty is levied by commissioner, that chartered accountant will be barred to issue the certificate, valuation certificate maybe, under the Income Tax Act, because the penalty was levied to this. So even the penalty amount is very small, but that can close the doors for the future growth or future work. Hence, you need to be very careful. There should not be any compromise on quality of that work, and the tax is required to be deducted at source. We come to the steps for 15 CACB as such. So you need to log into the portal. Many would have already done this thing, but still, for the completeness, I'll try to run through the process. Log into the portal. You need to appoint the chartered accountant who can issue the Form 15 CB, and that Form 15 CB can be filed electronically by the CA. Once you log in, you will find under the work list, you will find that the Form 15 CACB, you can download the acknowledgement for that number of that. And once the form has been downloaded, the password as usual will be the PAN number plus date of birth. You can verify whatever you submitted is the what you have mentioned in the form, or some error has been scrapped into that form. Once that is done, then under e-file option, there is a option to prepare and submit form online, the form 15CA. This for form 15CA to be filled, and if the payment, if you're using the option C, in that scenario, the e-file acknowledgement number need to be mentioned there, so that all particulars respect to the that amount has been captured here. You need to validate the form 15CA. This validation is required to be done by using DSC, and you can choose all part A, B, C, D, what is applicable to you, and make it. It may happen that once you're buying a DSC need to be pen encrypted DSC. In case the payment is being made by non-resident to non-resident, payer of that person may not have the pen in India. How you will deal with this situation? Form 15 CA-CB need to be CB to sign by chartered accountant, and form 15 CA need to be signed by the authorized representative. Hence, you can obtain can be filed. Section 140A says who can be authorized representative. So, in case of non-resident, when the person is not situated in India, you can use the power of attorney for making a payment. An Indian resident can apply on behalf of foreign resident for such payments. And when such Indian person is the power of attorney holder, then the in that scenario, digital signature of the foreign director or a foreign partner may not be required, and an Indian person can be authorized. It may be possible that the chartered accountant who is issuing form 15CB can be authorized to file the form as per the instructions of the foreign payee or payer. So once you form 15CB and is filed and 15CA captures the data, we will be able to verify under the My Account the view section the form 15CA which is being filed. It is also seen that when the submission is being made, so it will show the status as submitted, and on successfully filing the corresponding 15CA with respect to 15CB, it will show the 15CB is consumed. However, there is no facility where the form can be withdrawn as such, but in case the form 15CA against which the form 15CB has been consumed is withdrawn, then form 15CB will be considered as a withdrawn, and option can be seen online on this. So when you are issuing the form 15CA, any CB is been issued by the chartered accountant, what are the documents is required to be seen by that person in that scenario? First line of the form 15CB mentioned that I have seen or I have verified the underlying agreement. So looking at the agreement is most important thing. It is, we have experienced that non-resident are not willing to share the agreement to the Indian party and says that this is what I am giving you. You pay, you let me know what is the, you issue a certificate under form 15CB for that purpose. But in my view, you need to be very strong on that and say that I require that agreement. Without that agreement, I won't be able to issue the certificate, and this is a mandatory requirement. At the most, what you can it can happen that you may not keep that agreement in your possession. You may review that agreement, make the relevant notings which is required for you for that purpose, and return it back to the payer or payee, whoever is holding that agreement. It can be a contract, it can be a shares. In case of transfer of shares, there is a shareholders agreement which you need to look into it. Terms of the agreement need to be looked into it when the ownership is getting transferred, because unless until the ownership transfer is not happening, liability under section 195 will not trigger. You need to see the invoice or debit note which is against which the payment is being made. Then what is the nature of transactions and the correspondence which is happening between the two parties, Indian party and foreign party, or both foreign parties. What is the transactions happening, so that we can capture in our notes as well as in the form whatever is possible. You need to obtain the TRC and the Form 10F from the payee. TRC is a tax resident certificate, and Form 10F will consider this in detail subsequently. So I'm parking it at this point of time. Also require a tax in respect of the non-resident who is making a payment. You need to see that if that person may not have the TRC, or that person may not have the PAN number. Obviously, the non-resident usually will not have the PAN number. In that scenario, you need to obtain the taxpayer's identity number. In absence of that identity number, you need to obtain some other code number or some other things which is through which the government of that country is keeping a track on the things. For example, in case of US, there is a social security number. You can use that social security number for against the US, and which can be done on this. When you're issuing the form 15CA or CB and pursuant to which 15CA is been filed, you need to obtain the confirmation from the payee that to whom the payment is made is a beneficiary for such remittance. That beneficiary or a related party of that beneficiary is not having any PE in India, and being a tax resident of home country, need to provide a TRC. Then order under section 195(2) or 195(3) or 197 need to be mentioned there. You can obtain the certificate from the SBI in respect of the remittance which has been made for the purpose of rate of exchange. You can do it on your own also, but when the stakes are very high, you can obtain the SBI's certificate for the rate of tax, for exchange rate applicable for the rate of tax which has been withdrawn. This is the certificate which has been issued by the chartered accountant. Hence, as a CA, you need to follow the guidance note which is applicable to audit reports and certificates for the special purpose. You may not be able to skip the requirements of those things. Further, you also need to understand the provisions of Income Tax Act, provisions of DTAA, along with the MFM clause protocols which are there under the DTAA, and LOB clauses. LOB clauses is there. Then you can also go through certain judicial precedents which is applicable to such type of transactions. You may go through the commentaries which is for the provisions of Income Tax Act, DTAA, and then determine what is the rate of tax to be done. DTAA, as I said earlier, you need to look into in light of the amendments made through MLI. You know the section 206AA, which says that if the person is not having a PAN number, the rate of tax will be applicable will be the highest rate, that is 20%. So it says 20% rating force or rate which is specified in the relevant provisions. So whichever is higher. Can the section 206AA override the provisions of DTAA or not? We may look into the circular of the CBDT issued by CBDT, which is 333 of 1982, which says that DTAA provides a particular mode of computation of income. Same should be followed irrespective of the provisions of the Income Tax Act. So if you look at this provision or look at this circular, it tries to say that the provision of DTAA is a supreme and not the provision of the Income Tax Act can override the provision of DTAA. In view of this, there is a view that even the section 206AA has been there, still the rate of tax will not be applicable at the rate of 20%, but at the rate of which is specified in DTAA, and to which DTAA 20% rate may not be applied. One of the oldest decision for this or big first decision which was respect of the Serum Institute in India, SIA. The name of this company will be familiar to you, and this is in news every day for good causes with respect to the vaccine under this COVID times. Hence, the view is that if the rate of tax under DTAA is less than 20%, even though the 206AA may be applicable, still the 206 will not apply and the lower rate of tax will apply. Pursuant to this type of decisions, Rule 37 BC has been modified that in case there is no PAN. So 206AA applies only in case when there is no PAN usually. So even if case there is no PAN, then the payment is being made in respect of royalty, interest, FTS, or transfer of capital asset. Then the P can provide alternative information like a name, email ID, contact number, address of the resident country, tax residency if applicable under that law, and TIN number or unique identification number. So in respect of payments, respect to royalty, FTS, transfer of capital asset or interest, payment of interest, 2068 will not apply even if the PAN is not there, provided the 4 identify information has been provided to the tax officer. But in case of payment which is not falling within these 4 categories, then the provisions will apply of the 20% of being higher rate. This benefit is not available in respect of payments made to the artist, sportsman, or payments which is taxable as other income. So in order to obtain the lower rate of tax, you should have PAN or TRC, are 2 different things. One of the 2 things is required. In case you don't have TRC, so whether the 20% rate will apply or under DTAA, or the rate will apply as specified under the Income Tax Act. So there is a decision of Ahmedabad Tribunal in case of SCAP Industries, which says even though TRC is not there, but you are able to satisfy the tax officer through some other set of documents which shows that the person is a resident of other country. In that scenario, also 206AA will not apply. So mere for non-furnishing cannot be considered as a violation for the triggering of section 206AA. There may be certain issues with when there is a payment is being made on gross or net of tax. Instruction of number 2 of 2014 says the assessing officer determined the appropriate portion Sorry. The point here is that whether TDS is required to be made on the gross amount which is being remitted or what is the net amount is being remitted. If you recollect, I have said earlier that Section 195 applies only if there is a income. So Section 195 uses the word in such income and not uses the word such payments. So when there is such income, what is being used? So whether the remittance which is being made on whole amount should apply TDS or to the income portion embedded in that payment should only the tax is required to be deducted. If you can go to the instruction number 2 of 2014 and 3 of 2015, where you will find they have reiterated it applies only in respect of the such portion and apportionment of such sum. Hence, the TDS in view of that, TDS is required to be deducted only on the net amount and not on the gross amount. Net amount means the income embedded in that payment. For example, the TDS is required to be deducted in respect of there is a sale of property and the tax is required to be deducted when the payment is being made. In respect of non-resident, 195 will apply and not the provision of 1% on sale of immovable property will apply. When this has been applicable, you need to obtain the certificate from the 15 CB from the chartered accountant who shall compute the taxable income of that person, and then the TDS can be deducted only on the net of the amount and not on the gross amount. But there are certain types of payments. For example, there is a payment with respect to the royalties and FTS. So in case of the royalties and FTS, the payment TDS to be deducted on the gross amount, and there you don't determine what is the income embedded in the royalties and FTS. The whole amount is the income as such, and the tax is required to be deducted on the whole amount. There are certain income which are chargeable on a presumptive basis in respect of non-resident. In such scenario, TDS is required to be deducted only on the income on that specified. For example, that they say the tax is at 8%. So there is a Chennai tribunal decision which says in that scenario, the income embedded, that such percentage of the gross receipts on which tax is considered income under the presumptive taxation, tax is required to be deducted and not on the whole amount. Similar thing is also the Supreme Court in case of GE Technology has upheld the view that the tax is required to be deducted on the net amount and not on the gross amount. But in case there is a doubt, there is a composite contract, and what is the amount of fair portion of the income on which TDS is required to be deducted, and if you are not able to determine that thing, in those scenarios, in those doubtful scenarios, you need to obtain the certificate under section 192, 2 or 3 or 197 from tax officer to determine the correct percentage on which tax is required to be deducted at source. TRC and Form 10F. TRC is the format which is specified by the income tax officer. In case the content which is required is all of the content is not available, the TRC is issued by the foreign country, and they will issue in their format. If the information which is required by the tax officer, which is specified information, is not available in the TRC, the Form 10F is required to be fulfilled. The Form 10F has the various fields such as status, means individual company, PAN number if available, nationality of the country or the specified territory of the person where the company is incorporated. So territory will be in respect of countries like Hong Kong. Then SSA tax identification number, or if such a tax identification number is not available, similar to PAN number in India, you can unique number which is identified by the government of that country or specified territory. period for which the residence status is mentioned in the TRC, address of the SSE in the country or the specified territory outside India for which TRC has been issued. So when all the requirements which is not available in the TRC, then you need to obtain the Form 10F from the person who is making a payment. For example, the TRCs which is issued by Mauritius and the Singapore doesn't mention the PAN number. US doesn't mention the resident of the address of the resident as well as PAN number. UAE doesn't mention the status, nationality, address of resident country, and PAN number. In such scenario, whenever such payment is been made and the 15 CB is been issued, the Form 10F is required to be obtained in those scenarios. It is usually been skipped by the chartered accountants. TRC hai na, chalo theek hai. They don't try to compare those things, and the details are not there. In that scenario, there is a violation. Hence, the Form 10F is required to be obtained. There are some practical issues to be considered in case of TRC, because many countries follow the calendar year. Hence, the TRC is being obtained for that calendar year. So in that scenario, whenever the payment is being made, you see that your period is being covered in that calendar year for which the certificate has been issued. Year of remittance is different from that in which the tax was deducted. So how you will consider TRC? The TRC need to be considered in respect of the period where the payment of credit, whichever is earlier, and if that is been covered by the TRC, then TRC is sufficient. It may happen that TRC is obtained for the earlier year, but for the current year TRC is not been obtained. Can I rely on the TRC of the earlier year? In my view, it will be difficult to rely on the earlier year, though factually the person residential year may not have changed, but still it may be difficult to rely on the TRC which is of the earlier year. TRC is in the language which is other than English. In case of TRC which is issued by the Japan, it is it's written in the mentioned language in their local language and not that of the TRC is in the Japanese language and not in the English language. So in that scenario, difficulty may be arising with respect to how to rely on those TRC. So in that scenario, in my view, you need to obtain the translated copy of that TRC. Otherwise, it may be difficult for the chartered accountant or a company to rely on that TRC. In many foreign countries, such certificates are issued by an association or a self-regulatory body and not by the authorities way we envisage or way we look into in India. When there is no tax authority or when there is no such authority who issues a TRC, but it is issued by a self-regulatory authority or association, you can rely on that, but wherever possible, you can make a disclosure to it. There may be some countries where TRC is not available or TRC is not being issued by those countries. Mostly now all the countries are having, they have modified their law and they are bringing in the provision of TRC. So in such scenario, it may you may take a view that there is no law in that foreign country to issue TRC. Hence, the provision of TRC should not be applicable to that company who is making a payment. There is another point which is required to be seen that whether grossing up is required to be made when the payment is made net of taxes. So how we'll make the grossing up? There can be two scenarios. When there is a PAN 10 or TRC is there, and when there is no PAN 10 and TRC is not there. For example, the payment of ₹100 is agreed between the Indian party and the foreign party. And the foreign party says that amount to be paid is the net of tax. And the rate of tax is say 10%. So what you are making a payment is after deducting of tax, deemed deduction, that hence the payment is made 90%. So if you divide it by 0.9, you will get the gross up rate, which will be 111.11%. So this is the grossing up is being made. This is how. But now, in case there is no PAN or 10 for that non-resident person, and 206 is applicable if you consider that. If the PAN or 10 was available, rate of tax would have been 10%, since the rate in force is 10%. But since 206 AA is applicable, the rate becomes 20%. So whether the amount of ₹100 which has been paid is 80% or it is 90% only still. So we have the Bangalore ITT decision in case of Bosch, which says that 206 AA is not a charging section. It prescribes the rate when there is no TDS, when there is no PAN available or TRC is not available. Hence, grossing up is not required to be made with the rate of tax of 20%, which is specified under section 190 206 AA, but need to be grossed up at the same rate at which the payment is been made. So in that scenario, your grossing up will be the TDS will be on the 20%. So that will be 22.22%, and not the 20% to be applied other way around. There are section 195.2, 195.3 and 197. These are three options under which the lower deduction certificate can be obtained from the income tax officer. 195.2 is applicable when the payer can make an application in section 195.2, and whereas 195.3 application can be made by the payee. The application can be made for the purpose of determination of taxable income, appropriate percentage, and not on the whole sum is taxable in India. So what is the view is that section 195.2 applies when there is going to be tax, withholding tax is going to be there, but that is not a nil rate. We have conflicting decisions which says that the 195.2 can be applied even for the nil rate of tax, or even can be applied for the lower withholding of tax. But so hence practically both rates are done, but decisions are other way around, which says that 195.2 will apply only in case there is a withholding but at lower rate and not at a nil rate. The process, there is no application form under the application to be made, and you need to make application in the plain paper. AO shall determine the amount chargeable to tax, issue the order, and order is valid for the specified period. There is no time limit specified under section 195.2 within which the order can be made by the AO, and this creates difficulties. Earlier, the order which has been issued under section 195.2 was not appealable, but now Act has been amended, which is provided that it is appealable under section 248, provided payer has been paid the taxes under the agreement, and such taxes, payer has agreed to pay the taxes and payer has paid the taxes under section 248. So whenever any refund will arise subsequent to order of the order, that will go to the payer himself and not to the payee. Section 195.3 is there when the application is made by the payee and not by the payer, and the application is made for a nil rate of tax. If the order has been issued which is not in the favor of the taxpayer, no appeal can be filed against this order. But however, writ petition for the High Court can be filed under the jurisdiction of Constitution. This order under section 195(3) can be revised by the Commissioner under section 260. However, revision application under section 264 can be made by the payer or a PE for the purpose of this. Application form is the 15C in respect of banking companies and 15D in respect of the other than banking company. The application is required to make to AO. 197, this is the process similar to that what we have, even we follow for the resident payers also, resident payee also, that to receive the sum without deduction of tax at source or at the lower rate of tax. This order issued under section 197 is not appealable. However, the writ can be filed. This order is also revision under section 264 is possible. Application is to be made in the form number 15 to determine the appropriate rate of tax or nil rate of tax. But this will be nil rate is provided only if the SSC has been regularly assessed to the tax and has filed all returns or return of income due on the date of filing application. There is no default in payment of tax, interest, penalty or any other sum. There is no penalty under section 271 Roman 3. This section is not applicable for the current year. And when the SS is carrying the business in India is continuously for a period of 5 years and value of fixed asset in India exceeds rupees 50 lakhs. If all these conditions are fulfilled, then only nil rate is provided under the section 197. Otherwise, nil rate is not been accorded for the withholding of tax. With this, we are completed on the 195. I'll take next 10 minutes for the residential status, and then we can go for the question and answers, if any, from the participants. Residential status. The person is said to be resident in India if he has been stayed for 182 days or more in the previous year, or his stay in India for immediately 4 preceding years is 365 days or more and 60 days or more in the relevant financial year. If all these conditions are fulfilled, then person is considered resident of India. However, in case of person who has gone out of India for the purpose of employment, then the 60 days is replaced to 180 days. Even the person who is outside India or person is of Indian origin who has been to the visit in India, and for that reason also that 60 days is considered as a 180 days. But from the financial year 2021, law has been amended, which provides that 180 days will be reduced to 120 days for such individual who is a citizen of India and the Indian origin whose total income from other than from foreign sources exceeds rupees 15 lakhs. If the person is a citizen of India or a person is of Indian origin and his stay in India is say 121 days, which is less than 182 days, still he can be considered as a resident for the purpose of taxability. This is the first amendment. Second amendment is made for the deemed residents. A person is said to be deemed to be resident in India if any individual who is a citizen of India who is not liable to tax in any other country, so deemed to be resident of India, the total income exceeds rupees 15 lakhs other than foreign sources, and nil tax is payable in other country or territory by reason of his domicile, residence or any other criteria of similar nature. So Indian resident is there, Indian citizen is there, and who is not liable to tax. You need to see, understand difference that this applies only to citizen of India and not the person of Indian origin. Where the amendment was made in the 6.1, section 6.1, previous of what we have seen it. 6(1) capital A says applies only in respect of the citizens of India and not to the persons of Indian origin. Here also you need to look into the is foreign income for the is Indian income and not the foreign income to determine threshold limit of 15 lakhs. And if all these things are there, then person will be considered as a resident but not ordinary resident. The deemed resident or the amendment which is there, this will apply to the person, and accordingly that person will be considered as a resident but not ordinary resident. How it difference makes the resident ordinary resident and resident and not ordinary resident and non-resident. All incomes which are received or deemed to be received in India is taxable in India for all types of resident, ordinary resident, not ordinary resident, and non-resident. Income which accrues or arise or deemed to accrue or arise in India is also taxable in India in all categories of person. But which income which accrues or arises outside India is taxable only in case of a person who is a resident in India and not to the person who is a resident but not ordinary resident and non-resident. So what are the issues that are coming because of this residential status? Let us consider a few of those things one by one. What determines income from foreign sources? So income which accrues or arises outside India is to be seen. So that is how it is calculated: total income of the person minus income which accrues or arises outside India plus income which is derived for business connection or control in India, and income derived plus income derived from the profession set up in India. We'll consider will be is a definition for determining the income from foreign sources. So when this income from foreign sources is determined, whether we will consider gross income or net of expenses. In my view, we need to consider as a net of expenses and not the gross income. So gross receipts should not be considered as income, but 15 lakhs should be considered only after net of expenses. There may be possible that such foreign, such non-resident or deemed resident will be liable to is entitled for the Chapter 6A deduction, maybe under Section 80C, 80D, whatever may be. And by virtue of this, his income, net income falls below 15 lakhs. So without considering Chapter 6A deduction, his income is say 15 lakhs. And considering that deduction's income is say 14 lakhs. So in that scenario, whether you will consider gross income or net of Chapter 6A deduction, in my view, it to be considered as a net of Chapter 6A and not the, it should not be considered net of Chapter 6A, but the gross income, because that is the income from the foreign sources. When the person who is a resident but not ordinary resident, you will see that in the ITR requires the disclosures respect of the foreign assets. But when the person who is a resident but not ordinary resident is not required to make such disclosures of the foreign assets. Whether such deemed resident will be considered as a, for the purpose of deemed resident is not ordinary resident, so TDS would be applicable to him or not. So the person is deemed resident. When any payment is made to such person, whether the TDS rates which are applicable in Section 195 will apply or TDS rates which are applicable to resident will apply. In my view, the TDS rates which applies to the non-resident will apply, not to a resident for the purpose of 195. The transfer pricing provisions will not apply to that person because that person is resident. Then Chapter 12A, that is a benefit given to the person who becomes a resident after non-resident. So when such person becomes the deemed resident becomes the resident for the purpose of the this amendment, what is to be seen that that resident need to provide a declaration, and he continue to hold those assets as a non-resident. So that will continue to apply to this deemed resident also in respect of income for that assessment year, and for every subsequent assessment till the such transfer or conversion of asset into money has not happened. That Money Act will not apply to such deemed resident because he is a resident but not ordinary resident. Residency and lockdown. Because of this lockdown, few people have been to the, say for example in India, and suddenly in the month of March lockdown was announced, as a result of which the people got stranded into India and they could not travel back to the country. So whether that person will be considered as a resident or non-resident. CBDT has issued a circular for the financial year 1920 relevant to assessment year 2021, and it says in respect of individual who has been visit to India before 22nd March and they couldn't go out, the period of stay from the 22nd March to 31st of March in India will be excluded. If the person has been to India and he has been quarantined on after 1st of March 2020, so that period will also be excluded. Or if the person been in India and then he has been going out of or deported after 22nd of March, then that period should also not be considered to be a resident. This clarification has been issued. In short, the compulsory stay in India because of the lockdown or because of the closure of flights should be excluded for the purpose of determining residential status in India. This circular is applicable for the financial year 1920 only. The issue will arise also for the financial year 2021, and for which there is no clarification been issued by the government or CBDT till date, and there is a various ambiguities or doubts in the minds of various people whether how to treat those people, how to treat those situations subsequent to the lockdown for the current financial year. It may also happen that in respect of many senior citizens who are in US, they generally during the winter season come to India, be in India till the month of March or so, because in US the winters are severe, or in European countries winters are severe. So they be in India but they try to manage their stay, which is less than 180 days. Now they need to manage their stay less than 120 days, which is applicable from the financial year 2021. And for this period, and they couldn't go out of India because of this lockdown, flights are not available. So there is going to be a very difficult issue which may be arising in those scenarios. I want to understand from the CBDT, they want to issue the circular, but they are not clear how to compute the period or how to exclude the computed period. It may so happen that all people can become non-resident if they try to exclude the period of more than 90 days. Then the whole provision may become infructuous. With this, I am able to complete my presentation on this. We can have some questions from the participants on this. Back to the organizer. I thank you once again. Thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you, sir. I would like to request all the participants, if there is any query, then kindly unmute yourself and you can ask.
Sanjay, you have some questions you have sent me on the WhatsApp. Whether
Yes.
those are covered or still you have any queries, then we can deal with those questions also.
I think some of them are pending.
We can take up those questions first then.
Hello.
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 Yes, yes.
I want to ask that sometimes we pay the registration charges to the foreign entities. Whether what will the tax applicable in that case?
It depends what are nature registration charges. For example, if you are paying some registration charges for the entities which are located in US and UK, the probably there won't be any withholding of tax because this generally this falls under the category of FTS or the under FTS, and treaties of this country has a clauses of make available, and when you're making a payment to those things, there is no make available in India, and probably the no TDS is required to be deducted. But in respect to other countries, we need to look into the nature of transactions. Most of cases should not be applied because you don't income is not accrued in India as such, and TDS may not apply. If you have some specific example, then we can deal with that issue. Ritesh bhai.
Yes. Suppose we have a container registration to Bureau of. They are registering for the container numbers.
So this will be in the European countries where it is done.
Country specifically. Hello.
Hello. Yeah. Maybe the country is not available. In majority of cases, the TDS will not apply, but we need to look into the specific, because under the Income Tax Act, there will be a possibility that payment may be subject to tax. There is a high possibility. But in my view, DTAA will always prevail then in those scenarios, and the tax is not required to be deducted at source. It may also apply like the many CAs also doing the SEMA, or they are doing ESA from which is in US. So that you will pay the charges for the membership fee in those countries. In my view, the TDS is not applicable in that scenario also. Sanjay, your question now.
Sir, I put in chat box.
Chat box. Whether 15 CACB is required to amount transfer from NRO to NRE account? Yes, 15 CACB is required for the CB is also required, not only CA. And that is because as per the requirement that whenever any money is being sent from the India to outside India, here the payer and payee may be same person when the NRO to NRE account is being transferred. But you need to provide a certificate, 15 CB is required to be issued saying that the taxes on that amount has been paid in India, and then only the NRO to NRE can be made. The make available clause is a clause which says that whenever there is a FTS or a royalty which has been paid, there is transfer of technology to the person. For example, if there is a resident of US who is making I am making the payment to resident of US, and there is a make available clause under US DTAA. But if the person to whom I made a payment, he provides me something, but he doesn't provide me a technology where I can use the technology for making further such a product or something like that, then that there is no make available is not made available to me. Hence, the fees for technical services or royalties, TDS under Section 195 will not apply in that scenario. I think not required, but bank wants every time a safer side. That's what there was RBI circular. It's not the safer side. The RBI circular was there, which says that all payments should be supposed to be with the 15 CA CB or only or CB. But there is a comprehensive amendment which has been made by the under the Income Tax Act, by which the amendment where they provide all transactions in respect to which payments has been made need to be reported unless until they are exempted transactions. So, in respect of the transaction which are specified in these 33 items which are there on the screen, if the transaction falls within those categories, then only 15 CACB is not required. Otherwise, 15 CACB is required. And if you may make understand to the bank, probably the branch with whom you are dealing may not be aware of it. But if you speak with the person of that bank who deals with the foreign currency, or they may be aware, you can make them explain, they understand it, and then you may not require to give the 15 CB or CA. For the ocean freight, which is there, or agency charges to non-resident, I quoted the one decision of the Gujarat High Court, which is a recent decision, which says that in case of Sumit India water treatment, which is a decision of some 3-4 months back, which says that 195 or 194C is not applicable in respect of ocean freight. If the facts of a case are falling within that category, then 15 CACB is not required in that scenario. Or if even if the company insists or the bank insists for you, you may issue the 15 CACB with the nil rate of tax, quoting this Gujarat High Court decision, and you all being in Gujarat, the decision is binding on the tax authority of this Gujarat High Court. Agency charges usually should not be taxable in India because the services of that agent are rendered outside India in respect of the export of goods, so it should not be there. In case of the import of goods, there is a conflicting decision because the goods you pay the agency charges to a person who is resident outside India. With respect to the goods which are being imported into India, there are conflicting views where they have said that since the goods are coming to India, the withholding tax under Section 195 should be applicable. Point number 5, Indian shipping agent or foreign shipping line collecting payments for the customer base in India, remitting ocean freight. Again, Sumit India decision applies squarely to these facts, and it should not apply. Ship owners of a foreign country gives on hire to India shipping or coastal movement goods are used. Usually we have limited treaty with all the countries where the 195 will not apply. It is only applicable in very limited cases. You need to see that with whom the DTAA is there. The countries like Cyprus, many of the ships are foreign flag ships are registered in countries like Cyprus, and the TDS will not apply in those payments to them. But the answer will differ looking at DTAA provisions to that. Whether TDS is applicable in this advertisement made in US in one magazine, it should not be applicable. As such, for ocean freight of 15 CACB is not required. CB is not required because it is exempt. But if bank keeps on insisting, then at least you can file 15 CA because you're claiming the deduction as exempt income. So hence 15 CA may be required because this doesn't fall under the category of 33 items. CA can be avoided, but CB may be required. Then there are multiple questions, similar questions, which I'm skipping. Is TDS applicable on the work done like editing, typesetting, printing, posting, extra postage used in US, extra editing, outsource? In this, the question of Ankit Patel, I'm not able to understand whether this is respect to the some outsourcing work is been done in US or it is been done, some product is been sold in US and someone in US is doing this work. If some outsourcing work is done, probably that may be tax in India. But if it has been a respectable product which is outside India, for the printing, everything which is done outside India, probably there should not be any withholding tax or no TDS in India. $15 CB is not applicable when the remittance of money is made from the father to son. What is residential status for the person who is in on the foreign ship for more than 200 days in the current year and 165 days in India, no income in India? Person will be non-resident because he is outside India for more than 182 days. And probably the criteria of 120 days may not be applicable here because he is employed outside India and he has no other income in India. If non-resident has capital gains and paid tax on the same but not filed return, can we give the 15 CB or not? If the taxes has been paid, you can give the 15 CB saying that the due amount of taxes, amount in rupees so and so has been paid. Filing of return may not be mandatory there. Survey fees paid to the foreign company for survey done outside India, there should not be any withholding tax in India. Here the issue of Dubai resident which has been raised, the taxability of Indian resident or non-resident investing in India from Dubai. Indian resident can't invest from Dubai. It can be a non-resident only can invest through Dubai because that will amount to the round tripping if resident is sending money to Dubai and from there is investing in India, and that will lead to further difficulties. If non-resident is there and he is remitting the money, but only issue will be coming here is that of deemed residency where the 120 days is to be considered. There are two views possible. In Dubai, there is no income tax act, but if you go through DTAA, the person who is resident of Dubai, tax resident of Dubai has a right to charge tax on that person, but they are not levied tax. So there is a view which says that since their right to tax is there in Dubai, whether the countries exercise that right or not is immaterial, and the tax should not be, and that person 120 days should not be considered here, and the person should be considered non-resident. But there is another view which is of one of the Abdul Razak AR ruling is said that tax should be actually paid and not the only right to pay, right to levy tax should be considered. But I will consider the earlier my view that right to tax is, even if is there, that should be sufficient to consider the person as non-resident. Consultancy services provided outside India, usually yes, but this depends on DTAA. Provision need to be seen. In the US, certainly it will not be applicable. This last no question, 15 CB required, 15 CA is enough. This is with respect to what context? I am not able to understand.
The survey fees paid to foreign agency.
15 CA is sufficient. But in case of doubt, you can, 15 CB will also require because you are taking a claim that amount is not taxable in India. Then part D may not be sufficient in that because that is not exempt under the act as such. Sorry, 15 CB and CA both will be required. Any other question?
Hello. I just wanted to ask that what the exchange rate should we should consider, whether it should be as per the custom notification or the RBI rate as of that date, or
You have to consider the SBI rate, SBI buying TT rate of that day, and it is on the date on which tax was required to be deducted, and not at the time when it and the payment is being made. Neither RBI rate nor custom notified rate. Custom notified rate is used for the purpose of GST in respect of the sale of goods. RBI rate is not applicable, is SBI buying TT rate is applicable.
thank you.
In respect of freight, 15 CA-CV both are required. Because freight as such is not exempt under the Income Tax Act, hence 15 CA-CV both will be required. But certainly in the CB, you can take a stand that TDS is not required to be deducted, relying on the decisions or relying on DTAA provision.
I think all the queries are sorted out now, I suppose. Is any query pending? Participation may ask.
The PDF I'll share with the organizers who can share it with the participants, my PPT.
Sure, sir.
Seems that there are no queries being raised. By going to end of the session, I would like to request C. Janish Patel, Vice Chairman, Gandhidham Branch, for vote of thanks.
Yes, thank you, Sanjay Bhai. Good evening, all of you. I, Janish Patel, Vice Chairman of Gandhidham Branch of WRCF ICI, on behalf of Anand, Bhuj and Gandhidham Branch, feels honored to present formal vote of thanks to our faculty, CA Paras Savla sir, for sharing his valuable knowledge on TDS provision applicable for 15 CA-CB and residential status. Thank you very much, sir, for the detailed session. We really enjoyed a lot. Thank you very much. And I also want to thank all the participants for the huge participation. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
During this pandemic time.
Yes, sir. Your PPT was very good. We were getting good messages from the. You kindly share the PPT.
I immediately share the PPT.
Oh, okay, you
can-
share. We will share with all the participants.
Yes, I immediately share with it.
Okay, sure. So it was nice, sir. Nice
Sir,
session.
please provide
Yes, Jignesh bhai.
your mail ID so that we
Jignesh bhai, we are not audible.
will raise the query on mail ID if you permit.
Okay, sir. He's asking for mail ID, I think.
I will put
Sir,
in my
mail
PPT only. I'll put in my PPT my mail ID.
ID લેજો એટલે કોઈ ક્વેશ્ચન હોય તો આપણે
Sure. I'll put it in my PPT and you can share it.
permit.
Okay, chalo. Nice meet you, sir. Thank you
Thank
for a
you.
wonderful session.
I'll log out.
Yes, sir.
Bye. Thanks
Okay,
once
bye.
again to everyone. Pleasure
Thank
meeting
you,
all
sir.
of you on the virtual platform.
Yes, sir. Definitely, we will be waiting for a personal meeting of Gandhidham branch.
Sure. Gandhidham is my place where parents have been brought up, and
Yes,
we
sir.
have our house in Gandhidham. Sure,
Yes,
we will
sir.
meet up once.
Yes, sir. Sure. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.
Great, Sanjay bhai.
શું કે બસ ભાઈ
બહુ જબરજસ્ત, જોરદાર રહ્યું.